Weak Liberal policies have created a crime wave in this country like we have never seen before. And Conservative MP Andrew Scheer is here to explain why Carney's new bail reform bill will actually not help anything.
So I spent about, more than half of the last interview asking the government representative why they aren't repealing that. And I do take your point on the initial legislation in C-75. My understanding, though, is, by focusing on major crimes, for example, and what the previous bill in 2023 did, it allows for that principle to remain part of the guidance for nonviolent crimes, for non-repeat offenders, which might actually go toward helping reduce some of the backlogs in the courts. Why not remain open to that possibility?
Well, I think you've asked a great question. It gives me an opportunity to contrast the Liberal approach and the Conservative approach as it relates to this key point. Reverse onus does not make bail harder to get. If you think of bail, an accused getting bail as a hurdle that has to be jumped over, reverse onus just changes the direction in which the accused has to run to jump over it. The Liberals have set that so incredibly low that it kind of doesn't matter which direction the criminal is trying to jump over it from. This reverse onus list does not take away that principle of least restraint. It just shifts who has to make the arguments about whether or not bail should be granted. And judges will still have to look at the changes Liberals brought in and say, I am bound by this legislation to follow the principle of least restraint. And it won't really matter if it's the Crown arguing or if it's the accused arguing. They're still going to have that very low barrier to bail. And what we've seen since the Liberals changed these laws, there has been an explosion. We're not talking about a slight tick up, or we're not talking about, in specific areas. Violent crime is up across the board, across the country. It's up over 60%. Crimes with firearms is up, almost doubled. So we're talking about places that used to be safe, people that used to be able to park their car at night and go to evening events, go to restaurants, don't feel safe anymore. And so many lives have been shattered by criminals that this government has let out. So that's the key difference between the Liberal approach and the Conservative approach. We want to take away that principle of least restraint so that dangerous or repeat offenders actually go to jail.
I do understand that, but I'm looking at, for example, all the submissions put forward by the various police associations, which ask for exactly what the government says it's going to do, which is apply that principle of reverse onus. I look at the reaction today from the Toronto Police Association, which represents police officers in that city. They say this is a step in the right direction. The Canadian Police Association, this should be a moment for collaboration, not division. We urge all parties to engage constructively and pass this legislation as quickly as possible to enhance public safety and restore Canadians' diminished confidence in the justice system. What do you know that police don't?
Well, I know that police have been calling for the elimination of that principle of least restraint. And while they may have been calling for other things, we continue to point out the fact that basically what the Liberals' approach is this. Liberals look at dangerous and repeat offenders and they have compassion for that accused person. They have compassion for that criminal. And they say, oh, these poor people that fall into a life of crime and it's not really their fault and let's not make them go to jail. Conservatives, our compassion are for victims of crime. Our compassion is for the moms and dads that no longer let their kids go to the park, business owners who are getting extorted. I mean, Vashi, when you were growing up, did you ever hear about Canadian business owners getting extorted? That's something you saw in movies and mobster films. This is now happening in many communities across the country. You can draw a direct line to Liberal legislation that both lowered penalties for dangerous and repeat offenders, but also forced judges to grant bail. And what we're saying is, let's adopt. If you want to have collaboration, if Liberals are willing to admit that they've made mistakes, great. Go the whole way. Work with us to pass Conservative bill, jail, not bail, that will take away that principle of least restraint and keep those dangerous and repeat offenders behind bars so that they can't terrorize Canadians.
But again, today, Mr. Scheer, I don't hear police associations saying what you are, which is this doesn't go nearly far enough. We need to repeal that principle. And even if they were to repeal that principle, there are still, three pieces of case law, including in 2019, the Supreme Court case R versus Antic, that was kind of the impetus for the legislation in the first part that guides judges' decisions anyway. So even if you repealed what you say the government should, you would still have a judiciary that is guided by that principle principle to some effect. Applying reverse onus to major crimes will impact the way in which they're able to apply the principle and keep it to nonviolent crimes, will it not?
No, really, all reverse onus means is which party in the court case has to make the arguments. That barrier to getting bail is still incredibly low with that principle of least restraint. And as to the court decisions that the Liberals used as an excuse, I know that's what the Liberals want people to believe, was that there was some court ruling that forced them to write this law. It's just not the case. Those court rulings were kind of speaking to financial surety around bail. Once bail was granted, what conditions were attached to that. The Liberals chose to take those court rulings and build a hole that you could drive a Mack truck through for forcing judges to grant bail. So they nowhere in that court decision did it force the government to bring in Bill C-5 and Bill C-75. They codified the principle of least restraint. That is what led to the explosion in crime across the country. And we believe Canadians support us in this, that bringing in our jail not bail law meets the charter test of a reasonable response to a pressing and substantial issue facing Canadians. And I don't believe there's a Canadian out there who has had their car stolen or had their business broken into or seen someone, yelling threats on a bus or a subway that doesn't believe that crime right now, after 10 years of Liberal policies, is not a pressing and substantial issue.
Yeah, I don't mean to say that they were forced to codify it. It was their decision to codify it, but the cases do exist in case law. I just have to, before I let you go, Mr. Trudeau,
but they do not relate to the principle of least restraint.
It's about the latter principle. The judgment in R versus Antic did criticize lower courts for routinely overusing bail conditions. But I have to move on to just one thing, if you don't mind, before I let you go, because the leader of your party made some comments in a podcast that I want to get your take on, because it's actually about policing. The podcast, I believe, was taped October 3rd, posted yesterday. He was referencing the RCMP's decision not to pursue criminal charges against Justin Trudeau or other people in the government over their involvement in the SNC scandal. Mr. Poilievre characterized the leadership of the RCMP as, quote, despicable when it comes to enforcing laws against the Liberal government, and accused them of covering up for Trudeau. Do you have proof of that?
Did you hear the taped audio between the Liberal Prime Minister's clerk of the Privy Council and former Justice Minister Jody Wilson-Raybould? Because I heard that audio recording, and I heard explicit and implicit threats to a justice minister to grant, if she did not grant, a special deal to SNC Lavalin. I believe that's a matter of public record, and so I certainly I don't agree with the idea that there was not an attempt to interfere in the justice minister's role as an independent officer of the court.
But that's not what I asked, Mr. Scheer. You have a view that a crime was committed. The accusation from Mr. Poilievre, who in a matter of weeks or months could run an election and be prime minister, is that the RCMP leadership covered up for the prime minister. That's a very direct accusation about the leadership of our national police force. Do you have evidence of it?
Well, as I just pointed out, there's direct evidence of an attempt by the prime minister, a sitting Liberal prime minister, to interfere with the attorney general's carrying out of her duties. That audio was released. I listened to it on I believe you probably have too. And that is what I would point to. That when the RCMP says, oh, there's no evidence of interference, it's like, well, sorry, what more do you need? There's other cases where, the Justin Trudeau's illegal acceptance of a private holiday that the RCMP chose not to investigate. So, there's a lot of examples where senior Liberals have been caught breaking the law or attempting, or at least what a reasonable person would say there's evidence that should be explored, and the RCMP chose not to.
No, but the RCMP did choose to explore that evidence, and they have testified
they chose not
to the fact
they chose not to proceed to the point where
public statements. Wait a second. Public statements on record saying that they were not able to obtain certain cabinet confidences. So why is that a cover-up? Isn't that the fault of cabinet at the time or the government at the time? Shouldn't your ire be directed at the political level and not at calling the leadership of the RCMP despicable and covering up for a prime minister?
Well, I absolutely believe that the Liberals acted despicably in this, and I would just continue to
the RCMP commissioners who Mr. Poilievre accused.
I don't think you can make the accusation that I or my leader Pierre Poilievre were not holding the Liberals accountable for their role in this as well. I mean, we absolutely attempted to prosecute both the SNC-Lavalin scandal, the Green Slush Fund scandal. We tried to get those documents to the RCMP. We tried to get the RCMP to take action and elevate this to a level where these crimes would actually be prosecuted. That's not what happened. So I think my leader has a strong case to make when he calls this out, and we certainly believe that the leadership of the RCMP should act independently and should not be afraid to hold politicians accountable.
Leave it to the mainstream media to defend Justin Trudeau in some way, shape, or form. And when the Liberal government pays a bunch of RCMP officers to investigate themselves, what do you expect the outcome would be? And another thing that I'm going to replay very quickly here.
You have a view that a crime was committed. The accusation from Mr. Poilievre, who in a matter of weeks or months could run in an election and be prime minister.
In a matter of weeks or months could run in an election and become prime minister. Does this mean that a vote of non-confidence is coming? Does this mean that the Liberal Party is already falling apart and a bunch of infighting has taken place? The way Vashi worded that specifically made it sound like an election is coming up sooner than later. And I honestly find it a bit strange that a mainstream media host would even know that information or have access to it. But anyway, I would like to know what you think down in the comment section below. Hit that like button, hit that sub button if you are new, and have a good one.